Jikaze, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Africa, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. America, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.
Greetings, beautiful people. My name is Simon Javan Okello. I am in Seattle, Washington, and I really have a special guest that is joining me for the show today, Dr. Wilson Reed. Dr. Reed, just say hello to our viewers and our listeners before we continue with our conversation today.
Hello, good morning from Nevada.
Excellent. I'm going to do a proper introduction of my special guest today in just a few minutes. But for now, I want to share with you our proverb for the day that is going to ground our conversation. Our proverb is from Sierra Leone, and it says, "You can never grow older than your parents, however hard you try." You can never grow older than your parents, however hard you try. This is our proverb for the day. I would love for you to share your own perspectives about it in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, this is a good time for you to take a minute and do that. I am going to share 3 nuggets of wisdom about this wonderful Sierra Leonean proverb. This proverb is a reminder that our parents, have always been there for us, and they've gained so much wisdom and so much experience, and it's really, really important that we cherish the time with them and learn around them, sit together with them and learn what they know, because their time with us is also very limited. So here are the 3 nuggets of wisdom that I want you to think about in relation to today's proverb. The first one says that our parents have been here before us, similar to our ancestors. They've been here before us. So today, many children, even my own children, are actually thinking that they know a lot than their parents because of technology, because of social media, because of a few things here and there that how to press some buttons or to access certain parts of the internet that your parents or your grandparents can't access. So you think you're way advanced than them, but they've loved us unconditionally, and they love you even when you think you know more than they do, So it's just important that you think about the experiences that they've had and know that they built the foundation for these technologies to actually exist, So the first nugget is just for you to think about these people who have been here long before you, and they love you whether you think you're better than them or not, And then the second nugget is our parents are wiser and more experienced than we are. It's something that we can't change. And sometimes when we also make more money than our parents, we are more energetic, we can do more push-ups than our parents, we think that, I am better than him or her, but there is still something that you can learn from them. And this proverb is advising us that we should tap into their experience, we should tap into their knowledge, Then the last nugget of wisdom here says that our time with our parents is precious and we should cherish it, we are, we never know how much time we are left with them. I mentioned this at the very beginning, and it is important that every moment, that we have with them, we are spending more time listening than talking, because the more you listen, the more you digest, and the more you take what they can say, even if it's something that is stupid according to you. Just take it in, just take it in. It might be useful tomorrow, not today. Dr. Wilson, I want you to take this proverb and also expound on it. Share with us what comes to your mind when you hear this Sierra Leonean proverb. What is it that comes to your mind?
Well, the first thing I think about is I'm For the longest, I was a single father with my son, Creighton. And as he was growing up, I would say to him, I think you're confusing our roles here. My name is Dad, and your name is Son. I love you a whole bunch, but I'm the guy that's going out here working. And as James Earl Jones would say, I'm the guy filling up the refrigerator, with food and making sure we are living in a safe situation here in this community. So for me, Simon, this is really, really deep. It gets to accepting your spot in the family tree. The tree is big with lots of branches and some kind of in the real world, you cannot jump from your spot in the tree all the way up to the top. So you accept your branch. Do not try and elevate over the parents and especially the extended unit. There's mom, pop, but they're extended units on both sides, and there's a community. So, my line from this, and this is really a deep proverb, is respect your role. Your parents are not perfect people, but they love you and they're seeking to provide an quality education for you, uh, some spiritual guidance and love.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Reed. So, just to introduce you properly, for those who are meeting Dr. Reed for the first time, he's an author. He's the author of Junebug, which is an incredible book that I am in the middle of reading. Thank you for sharing the book with me, and also thank you for writing your story from the perspective of the main character of this book. For those who have not connected with you before, currently Dr. Reed is a consultant, a trainer, and a coach, but he's been an educator for a long time. He was a political science and African American studies professor at the University of Washington. He was before that he was teaching also at the University of Washington, focusing on political science, and before that criminal justice at the State University of New York at Albany, and before that Northern Arizona University, also teaching political science. So the fact that he's taken the time to write a book really reminds me of today's proverb, where we have to now listen to what Dr. Reed has to say after all these experiences. Is written a piece of a gem, that we need to take our time and read and also listen to what he has to say, because he's really an extension of our parents, an extension of our elders. And so it's really, really an honor for me to spend this time with you. And I want you to just take a minute and share with us, a childhood story, something that takes you back to maybe when you were 8 to 12 years old. This is one of my favorite questions to ask my guests, especially because for me, I feel like my leadership and my capacity, as a community leader or as a business leader, or who I am today, was really formed around when I was 8 years old, where my mother gave me a bicycle and asked her to help distribute milk and bread in our neighborhood. It was a business she was running. And so when she asked me to help her, I felt special. I felt like, oh, she sees something in me, And so when I was out there interacting with the community, selling the milk and the bread, I felt like I have something important to do, And until now, I still feel like I have something important to do. I feel like the African Father in America podcast is an important platform, and that's why I'm privileged to have guests like you. So, so let's go back. Share with us a moment during your younger years that really drives who you are today.
Well, I have a story from my Aunt Emma. She grew up, Emma Reed. She grew up from the same community I grew up in, which is very small, Redwood, Mississippi. We owned 160 acres of land, and next door to our home uh, was a plantation. So I was able to see what it was like. Our parents having a little plot of land as farmers and seeing my friends grow up on this plantation. We didn't judge each other, but we just knew that we lived in this environment that was that had some interesting dynamics. So my story is about Aunt Emma. Um, she would come from Washington D.C. down to Mississippi, and she loved going up in the woods fishing. And I was the little kid that was chosen to go with her uh, up in the woods. And I didn't like fishing, and I was afraid of snakes. So, I was the kid that they would say, "You don't have a choice here. Just get your little butt up and go up there with Aunt Emma." And I would carry the bucket, the baits, and all that stuff. And her thing was I was company, and I was, a young kid, and so I would just sit there and do things like throw rocks in the water and stuff like that. And more than once, she alerted me that some of the things I was doing was not cool, and I needed to listen up. And so I spent some time listening to her, but her favorite story for me, she was in the 1948 Olympics as a high jumper from a little school in Tennessee, and the name of the school was Tennessee State University. And she would not win a gold, but she would win at the national level, at the highest level. Did not win the gold, but she supported her friend Alice, who won the gold. So her line to me on this particular morning was, "Don't let being black hold you back." And for years, I said to my students, and Emma was a rapper before rapping came in. Don't let being black hold you back. And so what I learned from that is this is just some skin here, man. And so you've got to learn to deal with what it is and love yourself, love your family, that this is this is a lovely color. This is you're part of the human mosaic, right? And I had to learn that even though I was growing up in Jim Crow, with this level of oppression and these Southern apartheid laws, that I should be proud of myself and not let people outside of the family control me. So if somebody called me a name, as we say, I'm not that name. So the N word or whatever, I'm not that name. I'm a human person. So that's what I learned from her is how to take, people screaming at us from the bus or some boys and girls pulling up on me and some of my friends as we were walking down the road and calling us all kinds of names. That these boys are formed a certain way, and we have to love ourselves, educate ourselves, again, elevate ourselves, and walk around with our head up, not down. So I think what I learned early on from Aunt Emma and the rest of the women in the family, especially the women, is don't be a victim. Don't project yourself as a victim because of some external kinds of things that are human and beautiful. That you're more than this. You can elevate beyond this. But she was just a lovely person, and her favorite line is, "Come here, let me give you a hug. Give me some sugar." you know? So it's a lot of this stuff is universal stuff. You know what I mean? About loving yourself, loving your family, and most of our folks, when they would do that, is here's $1, and we're gonna send you some socks for Christmas. And I was like, geez, socks? I want something more than some socks. I want a watch or something like that, right? So again, you're trying to jump your role. And the proverb for today fits beautifully with this, that, you should be in a state of acceptance, especially in terms of accepting the love, accepting that you're going to get a toothbrush for Christmas, right? You're going to get, some lotion, that Junebug might have wanted a bicycle, because some of his other friends had him. But yeah, I think it's learning to respect your elders and respect people that had climbed up that tree and been able to see far and further than you. And Emma would return from the Olympics and earn a master's degree from NYU in engineering. She never bragged about it. She lived to be, I think, 87 years old, and I didn't find out about it until she had passed. She never went up in the woods and say, I was in the Olympics. I was big, and I have all those pictures on Facebook now of her and the women that won. And she didn't brag about it. She just went about the work. And she's ended up a basketball coach. She ended up learning how to play tennis and played with, some great people in Washington, D.C., and just was an all-around athlete, working with people at the UN. She taught some of their kids. So you can start out in Little Redwood, Mississippi, which is just a spot where the trucks pass by. And there was a postal service down at the store about 7 miles away. But the joke is we live so far out in the country that you need to pump daylight out there. so, so people say, you escaped that place? I said, yeah, man. But it was not just me. It was 6 million other African Americans that escaped the oppression of the southern part of the country and moved to other parts of America for good jobs, ability to buy homes, and purchase a quality education through hard work.
Excellent. Thank you so much. You are a wonderful storyteller. You are a wonderful storyteller. I could listen to you for a long time. So for those who are joining us, my guest is Dr. Wilson Reed, and we are here because he's just published a book recently. His book is known as Junebug, and show us the book, Dr. Reed. Show us the cover of the book. Nice.
This is me, the little guy.
So if someone is watching and they want to get a copy of the book, where could they get a copy of the book?
Yes, it's MississippiJunebug.net. MississippiJunebug.net. So it's all over Facebook. I have an endorsement that I put on Facebook today from one of the foremost anti-racists in the world, Robin DiAngelo. She said, I like this book. And so we've got 60 or 70 people that say, I like this book. So I've been giving away books, selling books for $20, and Junebug. We have a commercial, 30-second commercial, Junebug, MississippiJunebug.net. Yes. Please feel free to communicate with me via Facebook, LinkedIn, and the like.
Excellent. So, that I began reading the book. I haven't finished it, and I have a number of questions really that I would love to ask in relation to the book, but because a lot of my audience members are also in Africa, and also the African American community here in the US. They really don't know enough about the struggles of African American people and how that is actually a door for us who are just recently migrating to the US, and I feel that this book is important also for the African American community and people back home in Africa to read, So I want you to speak about why this is important to you right now. Why writing and publishing this book is important to you right now, and then pick your favorite excerpt from the book and share it with us.
Well, I'm a 73-year-old African American male, so I've lived 4 or 5 lifetimes in 3 scores and 7, or whatever that parable of living this life, and I try to get up every day and do that walking and stay on the trail. I believe that quality education is very important, and I started out. I don't know who taught me how to read or write, but early on, I picked up reading, and I loved being in the library because I thought that was just a wonderful place to be, and it's really peaceful in there, and nobody bothered you, and I could just love looking at the colors of all the jackets of all the books, and it would take me to another place. And I think that's the key, is reading and having access to good books. And I just think today, especially with this technology, it's gone into the stratosphere. But human relations, uh, some of the stuff I talked about growing up in Mississippi, the N word and being perceived of as an inferior being from an inferior race and all that stuff. Uh, I grew up when Malcolm X was still alive. I grew up when Dr. King was still alive. So as a little kid, I grew up thinking, geez, if these people out here fighting for and struggling for African American freedom, the least I could do is go to class, listen to my teachers, and learn something, But there were impediments all along the way. But what I tried to do is, again, number one, be proud of myself, work hard, not perceive myself as a victim, and find, and this is very important, Simon, is find moral and ethical leaders in my community, in my family. People like Lou Rochelle Brim, that I went to school with at the University of Washington. I saw a picture on some of your PR stuff. There were people out there doing stuff. And I think the most important thing is all the way back to the 1930s, there were African Americans going to India to learn about nonviolence. Dr. King, Howard Thurman, there were all kinds of people, not Dr. King in the 30s, but Dr. King in the late 40s, 50s, early 50s, went to uh, India to learn from Gandhi about how to successfully develop a nonviolent movement, because Dr. King and others felt that the way to solve this problem was a sort of a moral way of protest, education, stand up to power. And there were some others that said, hey, no, we need to confront this power and, fight this power. So there were elements in the community that would say nonviolence, and then there was other uh, um, elements like Malcolm and others that are saying, hey, we need to fight this power. And so there was difference in tactics. But I think for African people around the world, what we were living in was called colonialism. We can call it anything else we want to call it. But I grew up in a colonial society where education access, that's what I'm going to read shortly about the bus, is educational access was not equal. It was inequality that I was living. Junebug was riding on this little rickety bus, and the white kids are riding on this shiny yellow bus. What we're getting to here, as I understand it, is again this apartheid. And apartheid for our young listeners is apart hate, apart hate. So if you're in a system that you grow up in and you're told, hate those people, people grow up believing, I should hate those people because those people are different than us. So the struggle and the movement that I grew up with was right in the middle. I adopted respecting African women, and going right down the middle between the Dr. King philosophy and Malcolm X philosophy. And I would go on to use the autobiography of Malcolm X in my classes. And I would tell students, you got 2 weeks to read this book. And we're going to break this book into 4 parts: the early Malcolm, the later Malcolm, the Malcolm after he gets out of prison, the Malcolm that becomes a world leader. Then I would tell them, Dr. King has written 7 books. Started out writing on a napkin in the Birmingham jail. I want you to expand your knowledge. And one of the things I think is clear from Junebug is developing an imagination. I've jokingly used to tell my students at Seattle University, imagination, according to Einstein and all the great people, is more important than an education. Imagination is more important than an education. So we're focusing on getting a quality education, but having that imagination to see that big world out there. And reading is the window to that world, and allowing yourself to be influenced by these elders. And it's the first time I've used that word, but that's what you're talking about. And we're talking about with that parable this morning, allowing ourselves to respect those elders and not say, oh, that old man ain't got nothing going on. I don't want to talk to him. He's probably drunk, whatever, right? And so, we look and say, oh, we think we see everything by looking. But this old cat, as Spike would say, this old cat's got some stories that, he say, come over here. I got one for you. And I think that's what I wanted to grow up to be, is a respectful person, a moral person, ethical person, and a hard worker. So the story of Junebug is outworking other people that were trying to take shortcuts. This little guy is saying, geez, man, I don't want to take no shortcuts. I'm going head on. So Junebug grew up picking cotton, pulling corn, hauling hay, whatever he had to do to make some money. He figured out early on, geez, somebody got some money around here. I want some money to go to the movies. I want some money to have some fun, right? And I don't want to be poor. So that's the dynamics of growing up in an oppressive system, is trying to figure out, is this happening to me because of this, or is this happening to me because I'm a poor dude? And so my thinking is, geez, I got to figure out a way to gain some edge here. And if that means hardworking and whatever. And the story later on, if people buy this book, you can buy this book for less than $20. So if you go into Starbucks 5 times less, 3 times this week, you're going to spend that money for a latte. We're saying buy this book, right? And read this book and educate yourself, and don't grow up to be, I don't want to use the word stupid, but, uh, uh, don't get stuck on it. You know what I mean? Educate yourself and elevate yourself. So, Junebug, this guy is, the commercial is really great because it shows this big cotton field. But here we go. Junebug, the bus, chapter 1. Mama told me if I walked up to the road and stood here, the bus would come get me. But it ain't here yet. And I'm starting to worry. What if the bus driver forgets all about me and I miss my first day and first class of school at King's Elementary School. I feel all jumpy inside. I got a belly full of grasshoppers. So Junebug is discombobulated, we would say. He's trying to get it together, but he's anxious. He wants some of this, but the way he's grown up, he's not sure about all this. But anyway, I know I'm supposed to get on the little yellow bus. The big yellow bus takes the white kids to their school. The big yellow bus is shiny and new, and the little bus is old and rickety. But Mama say, we're lucky to have a bus at all. Some places the colored kids have to walk to school, even if it's far away. And the big bus full of white kids rolls past them and splashes mud on them. The white kids holler out the window and call them bad names. Junebug Mama is Willie B. Reed. Willie B. Willie B. And she's known as in the community as B. Daddy is Wilson Reed Sr. So I was growing up, Daddy was Pony and I was Mule. So you say, where do you get all these names from? Junebug and all these. In Southern society, people didn't call each other Wilson or Reed. They just give you a short name. Junebug, come over here. I got a joke for you. Or Junebug, come over here and do this. So it was an informal society where it was full of love. Inside that pad, there's lots of love.
Right.
There are problems inside, but
Right.
there is love inside, and there's Jim Crow lurking on the outside of the pad.
So I have a question for you, Dr. Reed, right there. There are two concepts or ideas in the first chapter that I read, where
Yes.
one, you talk about Jim Crow. And you talk about Jim Crow as a game that you guys used to play growing up,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And again, I'm a recently immigrated African here
Right.
in America. And I just want you to paint a picture of you playing that game, but also what Jim Crow really is,
Yeah.
and also why this book is important, because I think you describing what Jim Crow is and how as kids it used to be a game, but in the larger picture, it's this apartheid that you've been touching on,
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
and then I also just want you to touch on why education was so important to you. From a young age, you talked about. Well, let's address Jim Crow. What is Jim Crow?
Yes.
What is Jim Crow?
Jim Crow was a system set up by white leaders in the early 1900s. Like, let's say, after enslavement ended in some ways, but the legacy of it endured. The state legislative leaders decided, well, we don't have this formal structure of enslavement where black people are owned by white landowners. What we have here now is we need laws to control the social and political behavior of these former enslaved people. We don't want these people to just walk around and do nothing. We don't want social integration. So Jim Crow was set up to control social relations. There were 22 laws that govern these relationships. So, of course, white women were at the pinnacle of this system that black men were not to look at white women. And if they passed a white woman on the sidewalk, get off the sidewalk. Not to fraternize with white people unless you work for white people. There were 22 laws that governed social relationships. Black people lived over here and white people lived over here. So the only time they ever met was if, in fact, the black person was working for the white person. This is Southern apartheid, similar to apartheid in Southern Africa. And what I can gather, and there's documented proof to it, Hitler was influenced, and there's books about this, influenced by this model. And the idea is we don't want miscegenation. We don't want the integration of these races because we don't want mongrel children. We want to keep this race pure. And if we have this social fraternization, we have lost the control, and we're going to put those bad people like Emmett Till, we're going to deal with Till. And 3 or 4 guys would, through extra legal means, get Till and take him out and throw him in the Tallahatchie River. But the core of these laws is segregated schools. Junebug talks about going to a movie theater. It's segregated. The church is segregated. The cemeteries are segregated. And these laws are enforced. They are enforced. And we know they're enforced because 1850s, 1860s until the 1960s here in America, there might have been 4,000 or 5,000 lynchings. And there's Yale University, all these big universities have institutes that have studied and still to this day study lynching and hanging. And Mississippi was one of the most racist states in America. So of the 13 southern states that, fought to remove themselves from the other American states, Mississippi was one of the states that was the toughest. Oprah Winfrey's from, Kosciuszko, Mississippi. James Earl Jones is from northern Mississippi. Richard Wright is from Mississippi. All these people, and Junebug too, would grow up thinking, there's no place for me.
Right.
There's no place for me in this culture. Where do I belong? So we tried to make the best of this segregated society. We tried to create jokes about it. There's nothing funny about it, but to help people understand it, we joke, but there's a serious component to it. And just one second here. During my first 12 or 13 years as a young person growing up in America, there were over 17 lynchings of civil rights workers that were fighting for voting rights, educational rights for African Americans in Mississippi.
Incredible. I wanted to ask you the question around education and why you value education so much. And I also wanted to ask you, around that same, that same topic about education. The education system is being challenged because of technology. Technology, similar to what today's proverb was saying, many children don't respect their parents anymore because what their parents know is irrelevant. Their parents are used to having their own gardens and farming, but they're used to going to Uber Eats, so yeah, what do you say about that? Because to a certain extent, it's true that, even me, my mother, may her soul rest in peace, she wanted me to be a doctor, but now I'm a podcaster, so her dream was to have, her professor or, a well-educated son, but I ended up being someone who is influential in the creative world, producing Madaraka Festival, which is now the biggest African festival in the world. I think my mother would just be proud if I was just a doctor somewhere or a teacher somewhere. But I feel comfortable with what I'm doing because I get to stay on top of the changing education system, but also the work environment. Like AI currently, it's rendering so many people useless, to use such a strong word, in terms of employment. So education is kind of a jail in my perspective. Once you are a doctor, unless you're very creative, you will not survive during these times that are changing fast. You will only be a doctor until you retire. You know what I mean? But you
Yes, sir.
find that now, for example, there's a sleep doctor in the UK. He created a YouTube channel and he educates people about sleep medicine and sleep. And is sponsored by companies that are producing sleep related equipments and stuff. So you have to stay on top of your game in the current time. So I just want you to speak about that and also share your closing remarks. But before you do that, I just want to recognize Masha Mutisi, who is an amazing sister here in the Pacific Northwest, originally from Zimbabwe, who is sharing a couple of comments here. You know, she's saying it's powerful indeed. African American struggle also helped inspire Africans on the continent to fight back against colonialism. And she says a few more things. I just want you to know that I appreciate you for always supporting the show, Marsha. And Stephen Okoth is also joining us from Kenya. Thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, by the way. If you're on YouTube, take a minute and subscribe to the channel. Now, Dr. Reed, go ahead and speak to your value of education, why it was important to you growing up, and how it actually, there's a saying in your book that education is the one thing that nobody can take away from you. But technology is taking it away from people every day now.
Wow,
So what do you
that's
say
deep.
about that?
That's deep. Well, one of the things, if we follow up on that quote, is uh, once you read a book, stuff is inside your head. So mama and daddy and all of them are saying, you know, get something in your head that's useful to be able to help take care of your family and take care of yourself and be proud of yourself. One of the problems with this apartheid system I'm describing is we had a 2 or 3 tier educational system. We had a tier education, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and the like. And then we had Alcorn State, Southern University, Jackson State, and the like. And what we found is 1800s to the 1960s, $35 billion did not go to African American schools because um, the system did not permit it. And there's a famous quote by a governor in 1900s like, we want to leave these people uneducated. We don't want them to be smart. I want that end that shine my shoes. I don't want him to, I want him to drive my buggy. I don't want him to think he can become the governor. I want him to think that he can work for me, on my farm. I think one of the things that's very important here for young people to understand, you need to know your history and you need to know other people's history. And you don't have to read a whole bunch of books to get there. Read a history book, read a sociology book, but know some math and the like. But I think, again, your elders come into play here. I can see how this technology has taken over because I'm a guy that we started out with no typewriters, no books in the home. I had to go to the colored library to get my book. And I grew up in a time when there were typewriters. So, my dissertation, which is 500 pages, is was written by one of the earliest forms of a computer. And I would meet this lady once a week, and she would type 110 words a minute, and I would write on paper. I still write on paper. Here are my notes. I wrote my presentation here this morning, right? Uh, I have access to this computer, but the computer is not a human being. Now, people are saying we want this thing to be a human being, but it's not a human being. It's not warm and fuzzy. It's not going to cook your dinner. I admit that you could very well make that phone call and use that app to get yourself a meal here at your front door. But I would trust uh, uh, having a garden out back and and some tomatoes and eating what mama and daddy have farmed up out in the backyard than eating at the Pizza Hut every night. You're not going to grow up to be a very intelligent person eating pizza every night, donuts. So, mama and daddy were on to something when they had these little, uh, 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 what we call rural truck patches, where there's
Right.
watermelons, there's corn, there's cotton, all that stuff. So
Right.
we've arrived at a place where technology is king and queen, but we still have to learn uh, um, some moral and ethical values, like respect daddy. You know what I mean? Daddy didn't just jump off of a turnip wagon yesterday morning. He said, daddy, in your case, he started out working at Costco. You know what I mean? He started out, he got to America, he didn't jump straight up to the top. He started out working at, Antioch. You know what I mean? And so all of this stuff has to be put into some kind of perspective. Technology is important. We have an electric car. Me and my wife have an electric car. I never thought I'd be driving an electric car. I never thought I'd live in a home where we have a garage. We just drive right into our garage, stick the electrical cord into the wall, and we go out. My wife actually has a app on her phone. She can check to see how much the car has been boosted. And so we drove to Utah, and our electricity is going down. So my wife says, "Okay, let's roll the windows down. We don't want to use too much electricity." By the time we got to Cedar City, Utah, we had 4 miles, but we drove right up to a store, and there were electrical machines. So technology is very important, but the most important thing I think we're teaching is the human element is very important. And to use how I used Junebug was in an elementary school in Shoreline, Washington, called Ridgecrest Elementary. And teachers would have me come into the classroom. Ridgecrest was sort of like my little lab. And I learned from little kids. And kids would see me on the bus. I decided to become a crossing guard. And 4 degrees. I decided after COVID, I've got to find my real meaning here in society. And I became a crossing guard. And kids on the bus were screaming. I changed my name to Mr. Wilson. Hey there, Mr. Wilson, we love you. And I worked in a kindergarten class where kids would want to hug me every morning. Now, why did these kids want to hug me? Because they wanted some human contact. But Miss April Brown would say, now you need to check with Mr. Wilson before you get a hug. And the little girl, I want to hug you, Mr. Wilson. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Mm.
I don't know about that.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I mean,
So, Dr.
so,
Reed, your closing remarks. We've gone a little past time because I just love listening to you, and you have so much to say. So, after this, I'll reach out so that we can plan another episode together. So, go ahead and share your closing remarks.
my closing remarks is about this kiwi bird from Ghana, Sankofa, the importance of looking back, going back, and bringing the best forward. So, the word for today is from the Tiwi language, Sankofa. Learn from your past to build a wholesome future for your family, your community, and your nation. The purpose of Junebug is to look back, not just to look back, but to look back to move forward. And for people to read this and say, geez, this guy's got something to say. This is not some big old fat joke here. This is some serious stuff. So people say, well, that's the past. That stuff has happened. Well, my son told me last week, he wrote me and says he worked in a senior citizen home and a lady called him the N-word, an elderly lady. That hurt him. I had wanted to tell him this when he was 3 or 4 years old. That there's some mean-spirited people out there. Excuse me. But I think the key thing here is to learn from the past and to figure out a way to apply it to the present and do something really beautiful with it. So my birds, we got 2 of them here for protection, right? I ordered them from a brother in Ghana. I was like, look, I need these birds for protection. And I think one of the keys here is understanding your role and that you're part of a larger community. And there's some things that you can do every day to help others. It's like, think, can I help a little old lady across the street? Can I help somebody in the parking lot put some grocery in their car? So there's some human things you can do every day. Every day I walk out of here, one of my neighbors say, I'm reading that book and I like it. There are American flags all over my community. And I'm like, this stuff is, it is what it is. But some little old ladies say, good morning, young man. I love that June book. I'm saying, where'd you get it from? Oh, my husband, Bob, shared it with me. And I've been reading it. Thank you very much. And I think the message is, this is a universal theme here about human dignity, human worth, and learning to respect others. No matter how much money you have in your pocket, the key is learning to respect others.
Incredible, incredible. Thank you again, Dr. Reed. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and hopefully we'll have you back on the show again. I deeply appreciate the work you did with Junebug, the book. And is it available on Amazon?
October 10th, which is soon, 10/10, this book will be available in 3 or 4 countries. This book will be available. In Junebug, right at the front of it, it says this book will be distributed London, Nashville, Melbourne, and Vancouver. And I'm going on a speaking tour where I'll be coming to Seattle for about 10 days, and then I'm going on to Minnesota for about 10 days. So I'm open for lectures and book signings. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
I appreciate it, Simon.
Well, thank you. Thank you for an incredible work. And thank you all for joining us for today's episode of the African Father in America podcast. My guest today was Dr. Wilson Reed. We really spent a lot of time today. This is one of the longest episodes I've had in a while, almost an hour, and it's well deserved, So go and, October 10th, get a copy of the book. I am privileged that I already have a copy myself. And I also want you to go to Facebook and follow Dr. Reed over there. He has a community over there that he's building around this book. Make sure you support, and then I'll be here again tomorrow all the way to Friday, 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. East African Time. So join me tomorrow again for another incredible episode of the African Father in America podcast. I'll see you again. Same place, same vibration. Take
Thank
care,
you very
Dr.
much.
Reed.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye.
African Father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. African Father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington.